During the Ashes of the Imperium novel, we learn that the Heresy has led to changes in how Space Marines are mind-altered to serve the Imperium, and we will be discussing that lore from Chris Wraight in today's video. So, welcome friends to another 40k video, and let's begin. Here Archimus, a Space Marine, speaks to a tech priest, Jessica Ervo, about the replenishment of Marines on board the Phalanx. What success rate are you achieving? Archimus asked. 20% survival, current and predicted, she replied. It would be higher, but your master demands speed. And then she says, this is new, experimental. We've had refugees from Luna here, as well as biotechnicians from the palace. Some of the tech here is very old, some of it sanctioned during the siege. We are still working to achieve optimal results. Archimus halted, studying the contents of one of the cells. The aspirant was shivering in his bonds, his every muscle taut, his knuckles and wrists bloody. The iron mask that was clamped across his face enclosed his ears and nose, as well as his eyes, was clicking and chattering, clearly feeding material in a constant stream down a range of sensory links. All the while, Legion serfs monitored the results. Psycho-conditioning, said Ervo, standing beside Archimus and looking on with undisguised interest. A little more involved than the hypnotic work you would have undergone. You were given certain traits at a subconscious level, augmentation of your existing propensity for violence, further reduction of your already degraded fear response. All your brothers underwent the same procedures, and it made a difference back then, when we were not expected to counter that which we knew nothing of. Ervo gave a cynical smile. Now we know all about it. What can happen to legionaries whose minds are open, so your new brothers will have a narrower range of emotional responses. They will respond viscerally to certain cues, ones we have isolated after studying the methods and appearance of the enemy over the course of the war. They will recoil from these things as if burned by them. They will find it painful to even entertain the idea of such concepts existing. Their hatred, always quick to kindle, will in these circumstances be rapid and unquenchable. So to come in here for a moment, the Astartes were essentially not made to fight others of their kind within the mind alterations they undergo, and not able to perhaps cope with it on a way that won't compromise their position. So now they have been prepared to endure the betrayal with a narrower emotional range, pre-programmed opinions and responses to seeing the traitors, and of course all this going on as the loyalists are preparing to push back against the traitors to drive them away from terror, and further so, the speed with which they are made and what changes are put into this altered Astartes mindset really is so the Marines' ranks can be replenished, and the risk of it, things like heresy happening again amongst the Marines, being led by the Primarchs, will be minimised to happen again in the future. Now back to the text. Archimus watched the process unfold, feeling a deep sense of unease. He had a genetic kinship with the aspirant currently undergoing the trial, one that would become profound once the man's transformation was complete. Much of his own training had been brutal, of course, with plenty of psychological work accompanying the physical changes, but this was far more strenuous. This was a dismantling, a deep reworking of ancient species instincts. It will change them, he murmured. Ervo nodded. Profoundly. They will be less able across the full spectrum of capabilities. They will be slower to laugh. They will struggle to comprehend the ways of those they are charged to protect, but they will be just as deadly as you were, maybe more so, and harder to turn from their course. So better protectors, but less human with it. Dawn is in agreement with this program. Full agreement, as is his brother. It has the highest priority. I assume the brother mentioned here is Ubute, as no additional context is given, but they are the leaders of the Primarchs in this moment, the two leading voices. Archimus turned away, started to walk again. Dispiriting nonetheless. Ervo came with him. Undoubtedly, the war has birthed many hateful things, but it cannot be allowed to happen again. So, how human did this leave the Marines? We now have an example of this in the book Master of Wraights by Rob Young. Here a Marine questions who he is. This fella is a Primaris, and a rogue trader has said to him, "Is there anything left of you that is human, or that was cut out and left behind when you became one of the God Emperor's angels of death?" That question, a few simple words, spoken by an angry rogue trader who had no leverage, no hope of victory in the battle of worlds, must have been little more than a parting shot on Demetrius' part. But to Farron, who had been subconsciously considering that very question for the last several months, it had opened a wound that he had long denied the very existence of. Was he still human, or had Belisarius Cawl cut away his humanity when he had crafted his Primaris Space Marines, imposing reason, order and logic into Theron's body and excising anything he saw as superfluous to his duty? He thought back over the years since his reawakening of his earliest days as a Primaris Space Marine and the actions under Visenius. He remembered his empathy being much stronger then, how it had pulled at his decisiveness and clouded his mind as he adapted to his new body in an era that he had not been born to. That indecisiveness had been eroded over time and through battle until it was almost lost as he had become to serve in the 6th Company under Maximus Epaphus. He had pushed emotion and empathy aside in the name of duty, of rationality, and the practicality of war. In doing so, he recognised that he had done himself an injury that was more spiritual than physical. He no longer recognised his kinship with the humans, nor could he empathise with them despite fighting to protect them from the worst of the galaxy's horrors. So we get some good insight there of the after effects of what happened, with the emotions blunted and changed, but they still have the rationale, as with this example, to question themselves. So as to the law, them changing the minds of the Marines makes total sense given what happened in the Heresy. Why would you stay on the normal course and release the power of Marines under a Primarch again into the galaxy without that protection? What I don't think comes across is that the Marines in 40k are all like this, clearly less emotional, more preconditioned. It's part of this book being written, and by this book I mean Ashes of the Imperium, being written years after all the prior books. Of course, all Marines, to me, feel like they do have some humanity within them, along with the bent towards obeying the Emperor and their leaders. And I've honestly not really noticed the difference in writing between the Marines in 1340k. Maybe that's just me. So when I do what I like to do at the end of these videos, I like to ask what you think to this little bit of law, and that this, is it realistic? That it was signed off by Dawn and Rabute? Let me know your thoughts below. Yeah, I was away on holiday for a little while and now I'm back, but I did manage to read the Ashes of the Imperium novel whilst I was away, as well as Master of Wraights. I'm planning to break down the Ashes of the Imperium book into 3 or 4 videos. Right now there's this video, there's one focusing on the effects on the warp after the battle between Horus Lupercal and the Emperor. Then there's possibly another one on the Emperor being put on the throne, but I need to reread those parts. And my other idea for a video was on the Selenar, who managed to make lots of gene-enhanced Space Marine type beings when they're trying to defend their kingdom from the forces of the Primarchs pushing back against the traitors. But again, I need to reread those bits, so we'll see how they come out. As for the books themselves, I thought the Ashes of the Imperium was good for what it was. It sets up a lot of things, but it is very much set up in a lot of cases rather than payoff. I like action, so I could do with a little more action in it, though it didn't really fit some parts of the novel, but I did enjoy it overall. And the Master of Wraights, which was a decent bolter book. I like the main character, how he's portrayed, how he's shown to be quite thoughtful and self-reflective. But outside of that, I thought the action and the story was just pretty generic, to be honest. It felt like a bit like an offcut from the Plague Wars trilogy. But still, not bad, just solid is what I say for that one. Whilst Ashes of the Imperium, I'd recommend to give it a read. Anyway, let me know what you think to the law in this video and your thoughts in general down below, and we'll talk there.